Hi folks, my perspective here. The renowned scientist Albert Einstein said, "I've come to believe that the motion of the earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment, even though the earth is revolving around the sun." Now don't you find this strange? That we are moving at phenomenal speeds, spinning and moving around the sun, yet we see no visible proof of this. So Albert Einstein's statement can also be understood as, we see no evidence because the earth is stationary. Yes, if we read what he says, or we pay attention to what he says, it can be understood in two different ways. Do some research into what Albert Einstein had to say about his connection with the Jesuits. Here he is with Georges Lemaitre, and the father of the Big Bang. So is it possible that we are simply being played? Is it possible that we're being deceived? Could it be that Albert Einstein was just simply a Vatican Jesuit puppet? Do some research into the largest telescope in the world, or one of the largest, Lucifer. It's owned 50-50 by NASA and by the Jesuits. The top astronomers in the world, all Jesuits. So why? What is the connection between the Vatican and Jesuits and astronomy? Because this is where we receive all our information from regarding space, is from them. Do some research into the Jesuits' control over the education system of universities. So, right from our early days in school, we are taught that the earth is spinning, but there is no visible evidence of it. And we simply accept this. This is an amazing statement. An amazing statement like this would need amazing proof. But yet there is no proof. They're telling you that don't bother going and looking outside because you won't see anything, you won't find any proof. Because the most intelligent people in the world couldn't find any. Yet this little boy, you see, if he takes his hose pipe, the garden hose, and he turns from east to north, you will notice that the water will lag behind, the water droplets will show this motion. And if he spins that water nozzle around, the water drops will reflect the motion that this little boy puts on the nozzle. And if he turns, it will be reflected. And if he runs, he'll run into the water, and the forces and the friction will have an effect on the water droplets. Now we know this, and we've all done this as young children. Yet, when this little boy stands still in one direction, if he's facing east, the earth is actually moving at over 100,000 kilometers easterly and spinning around the center axis at 1,600 kilometers. Yet the water droplets will show no evidence of this whatsoever. The water droplets will ignore this amazing speed and only reflect the motion that this little boy puts on the nozzle. The water droplets will reflect the motion this little boy puts on that hosepipe. and totally ignore these amazing speeds that the earth is spinning around the heavens, as we're taught in school. This little boy can face north or south, and the water will not reflect his motion easterly. So they'll tell you, no, this is not a real experiment. You see, we mustn't do things like this, and we mustn't observe the earth around us, because we're not qualified. See, because Albert Einstein says that no matter how hard you look, you won't find anything. It's there, but you won't find it. See, does this sound logical to you? You see, what you need is 3 stooges, a wizard, some money, 3 calculators in a row, because the numbers being discussed will be so big that it won't fit onto one calculator. You'll need some windy contraption and a scale that is so finely tuned that it can weigh smoke. And on the opposite side of that scale will be a mirror that's so highly polished that if you looked into that mirror, you'd actually see the other end of the universe behind you. You see, experiments have to be complicated with big contraptions, and only wizards can do the experiment. And folks like you and I, we're not intelligent enough. Our eyes are not good enough. Remember, Albert Einstein says that there's no experiment that we can do. So ignore your eyes, ignore your mind. Go with what they tell you. You know, this attitude is reflected in the world around us. For example, you see, they'll tell you justice is blind because she's prejudiced. To avoid prejudice, she's blindfolded. When reality is, the scale is just a prop. You see, how can justice render a true account if she's blindfolded? She has to look at the scales. So justice doesn't need to see the scales. She's blindfolded because she's receiving instructions from the scale at her feet. You see, justice in the system isn't real justice. It's simply a serpent's standards, man's standards of what is right and wrong. It's not real justice. They don't need the scale, so they're blindfolded, because the information is coming from the scales at her feet. And we're in the same position. You know, if I ignore my eyes and I don't look at the scales, the real scales, and I'm listening to the other scales, well, then I'm going to be misled. It's an old story. We know the story well. We simply don't pay attention. So, Michelson and Morley experiment, they were just the 2 stooges, and along came Albert Einstein, and he sealed the deal, and we were being played. Remember Albert Einstein's statement that he said that the human eye is simply not good enough to make these judgments. Yet to the Michelson and Morley experiment, you walk around and around you go, and they split some beams through some smoke and mirrors into a device, and straight into the same human eye that Albert Einstein said is not good enough. So the purpose of the Michelson-Morley experiment was just to reinforce in your mind that the senses the Creator gave you is simply not good enough. that our eyes are not good, our senses are no good, and that we cannot do simple observations because our observations will be wrong. You won't be able to judge if you're on a small boat fishing and a fish eagle was fishing next to you. You wouldn't be able to determine if the fish eagle was moving or you were moving. This is being reinforced into our minds all the time, that we must ignore our eyes. Don't look properly, don't think. That these wizards have got everything nicely packaged for us. We have to go to them and listen to them, and they will tell us, their scales will tell us. Not the real scales, not true justice and righteousness. Their scales will tell us. So I take my video camera, I go out, I watch the clouds moving. Now I know the clouds are moving, and I see the sun moving. I know the earth standing still. The clouds are moving and the sun is moving, and I can see the sun moving away and getting smaller as it moves away from me and disappears over the horizon. There's nothing difficult to understand in this. The problem is we've been believing these people and trusting in them, and we should not put our trust in men. That's the problem. So they'll tell you, no, you won't pick it up. You see, if I have a rotating platform, and here's a man on this platform, and he's filming the sun, and the sun is fixed at the center of that platform, he will see this motion in the camera. The rotation, you will pick it up, especially at sunrise and at sunset, because your angle is continually changing. They'll tell you the clouds are spinning with the earth. You will see the rotation in the clouds. So sure, the clouds will move as the wind blows them, but this motion, the rotation motion, would be unavoidable. You would see that rotation in the clouds, yet we don't see this at all. We don't look for this because Albert Einstein said to us, well, we won't see it, so we don't bother looking. You see, so we've stopped using our senses, we've stopped looking properly, we've stopped observing, and we've stopped thinking. We've become puppets. There's no appreciation for the real creation anymore. We've stopped appreciating the Creator and the Creator's wisdom. If you were traveling in a linear line and you were spinning and you were traveling at 70,000 kilometers an hour and your camera was fixed on a fixed position, whatever's in the distance would be blurry because you're traveling at these phenomenal speeds. Yet in our video footage, the sun and the clouds are both in focus. And if you're doing time-lapse, well, the further you are away from the center of the rotation, your time-lapse footage will be different. The sun in your time-lapse images will be traveling at different speeds. At the equator, it'd be moving faster, and near the poles, it'd be moving slower. Yet footage, time-lapse footage from all over the world, the sun moves at the same speed. Now, this is an issue. We're going to discuss this issue, the motion of the sun. If we just think about it, it's astounding. Look, your frame of reference, right? If you were on a rotating platform, your frame of reference would slide over. Your frame of reference, the speed would change, and the frame of reference would move behind you. So think about this. We're going to discuss this in more detail later on. In other words, your frame of reference, look at the red arrows, it slides over. Whereas what happens is we don't see this motion at all. Now, another issue connected with this is linear time. See, time travels at the same speed. It's linear. It can be measured. We measure it in seconds, in minutes. Its speed is constant. Now, if this speed and if time was related to the sun, whoa, now we have an issue. You see, now we have a big issue. Because, let's take this young man. If he's on a Segway, right, and he's filming an object in front of him, and he's going around in a racetrack, in his video footage, when he plays that video footage back, the speed of whatever he's filming cannot be constant. So let's have a look at this. The same applies to the sun. Your speed, the speed of the sun, and your time will change. Because your motion now is towards the sun, right? And now your motion is across the face of the sun, it would speed up. You'd catch up at 12 o'clock, and now your speed would still be faster. And now as you move away from the sun, your speed would slow down. So time itself, if you were living on a spinning ball, would be an issue. This simple fact that time is constant and the sun's motion across the heavens is constant is astounding. We just don't see it. We don't think about it. Think about it. The Creator created the motion of the sun at a constant speed no matter where you stand on earth. If you meditate on that and you understand that, its implication, it is truly astounding. It's mind-blowing. How the Creator did this, I've pondered this for years, and I don't know the answer, but it's astounding. So if you were on a moving platform, right, and you were filming a fixed object, and you had arrows above your head, you'd see those arrows in your footage, and those arrows would speed up and slow down. The arrows would move towards the object, and as you moved away, the arrows would move away from the object. You would see this. Despite what Albert Einstein said, you would see this in your video footage, and we don't see this. So regarding the frame of reference, so look at the arrows under the man. You see your position is moving towards the sun, right? And as you approach the sun now, your position now slides to the left. So if you were 2,000 kilometers away from the North Pole, or 6,000 kilometers, you would move forward 6,000 but slide to your left 12,000 kilometers at the same time, because you are off center and the light source is fixed to the center of the platform. Your frame of reference then would slide to the left and then slide behind you. But people filming the sun in a time lapse, and they're following the sun, simply rotate around their center position. It's not the same thing. There's a difference. But we don't think about these things, and we ignore this. Why? It's because we've been told that our senses and our minds and our eyes are simply not good enough. You see, we've been set up. We've been lied to. It's as simple as that. They send these men and tell us these men are geniuses, these people are so intelligent that we have to bow down to them, because if we don't, we're stupid. And it's a mistake. Do not put your trust in men, because if you do, they're going to make a fool of you, and they're going to make you their slaves. Simple as that. Do you want to be a slave? I don't. Not of a man. So take your garden hose, go into the garden. Face north, face east. You'll see that there's no motion detected on the water sprinkler. And there should be. If you faced east directly, and you faced your water sprinkler up into the sky, well, the earth would be moving away from those water sprinklers and moving away from those water drops. And if you now turn the opposite direction, they should be coming toward you. At sunset, you'd be moving into the water droplets, and at sunrise away. So we see there's a problem. This is an old story that we know well. You see, whether you believe the creation account in the Bible or not, it's not the point here. The point is we can learn something from this account. The account is simple. You see, we know the story. The point is that Eve believed the serpent. No matter how astounding the serpent's claim was, she believed it. You see, Eve wasn't stupid. She knew that snakes don't talk. So when the snake was talking, and the Bible account says she saw that the food was good to eat, well, the snake was in the tree of the knowledge of good and bad. She hadn't eaten the fruit yet. She knew it was good to eat because the snake was eating it. So she may well have thought, well, if this dumb snake eats this fruit and can speak, it must be true. I'll become independent of the Creator. And it was a lie. It cost her life. Now in the Bible, God's word says that the earth is fixed and cannot be moved. Now, it says it clearly over and over. Yet we read this, and immediately what it says here is being supplanted with what we've been taught. We judge the Creator's word according to man's word. We're making the same mistake as Adam and Eve. You see, and the issue is that there are consequences. The simple truth is that a lie is like a spell. If you believe the lie, you come under the spell of the person who told the lie. And the Bible says that there was a powerful spirit creature that was manipulating the serpent. And Eve was thoroughly deceived. And the consequences, she suffered that. And it's the same with us. If the Creator says one thing, and now we start comparing that and start understanding that according to man's word, we're making a big mistake, and we're going to suffer the consequences of that. So the account in the Bible of the three Hebrew men, the Babylonians, with names were Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they set a fine example for us. You see, we understand that they must have received some flack from the Hebrews that were bowing down. You know, they would have said to them, look, stop being a troublemaker, man. Just bow down. You know, just stop being a troublemaker. But they set a good example for us to follow. That we're not going to bow down to the system. If the system contradicts the Creator and contradicts what we see, because what we see with our eyes and what we understand with our senses confirms what the Creator tells us. Why would we throw that away and bow down to these idols of today? And that's all they are. These big heavyweight magicians, it's just another form of idolatry. So it's encouraging that there were people that were prepared to stand up and not bow down. And I respect these three Hebrew men. They set a fine example. So cheers. Thanks for watching.